Who did Darth Vader actually report to? Trick question. Nobody's sure, and that's the point. The Galactic Empire looked, from the outside, like the most disciplined war machine ever built. Matching uniforms, a single flag, one emperor at the top. Pull the cover off, and there is no machine. There's a navy that despises the army, an army that ignores the navy, a secret police, the ISB, that spies on both, a political wing, COMPNOR, that answers to neither. Grand Moffs running entire regions like private kingdoms, Grand Admirals who outrank men who outrank them on paper, and a Sith Lord with no official military rank who can choke any of them to death on a whim. This isn't an organization. It's a knife fight in a shared uniform. And here's the part that should change how you watch every Imperial defeat in the films. It was built this way on purpose. The man at the top wanted it tangled. A galaxy that can't agree on who's in charge can never agree to turn on you. Vader is the clearest single illustration of what the whole system is doing. Canon material is unambiguous on the core fact. He held no formal military rank. The Imperial Army, the Imperial Navy, and the Stormtrooper Corps all had clear hierarchies with insignia, promotion tracks, and command chains. His name appears in none of them. He was addressed simply as Lord. Not Admiral, not General, not Supreme Commander. That last title exists only in the Legends continuity, where it was formally his. In Disney canon, the position wasn't his. He didn't wear rank insignia, didn't rise through any recognizable chain of command, and wasn't promoted so much as installed. The 2015 Marvel Star Wars comic places him as a member of Imperial Command, but that body's own canon documentation acknowledges its place within the greater command structure hasn't been fully established. Even the governing texts can't resolve it. What Vader could do was execute Admiral Ozzel via force choke over a view screen. No court-martial, no procedure, no officer in the room challenging the legality. Then immediately promote Captain Piet in the same breath. He could destroy a rebel cell, but couldn't administer a sector. He could kill a governor, but couldn't replace one. His authority was entirely personal, flowing from the Emperor's favor rather than from any office or system that could outlast it. On the Death Star, inside Grand Moff Tarkin's jurisdiction, Princess Leia read the power dynamic correctly. Her line to Tarkin was, "I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash." In that theater of operations, a regional governor outranked the Emperor's own apprentice. 3 films in which this same Sith Lord commands Death Squadron from the Executor and executes admirals without consequence, and he's still technically not on the org chart. So which outranked which, Grand Moff or Sith Lord? The answer is, it depends on who you ask, when, and where you are in the galaxy. That's not a failure of bookkeeping. That is the system working exactly as designed. The Imperial military officially comprised 2 primary combat branches. The Navy controlled space, star destroyers, fleets, orbital assets, the Admiralty. The Army controlled the ground. 2 separate hierarchies competing for budget, prestige, and the Emperor's favor. Rogue One puts the rivalry on screen directly. Director Krennic and Grand Moff Tarkin fight openly over credit and control of the Death Star, the political stakes visible in every shared scene. The very first scene of Imperial High Command in A New Hope, the conference table in the Death Star, is an inter-service argument. Admiral Modi and General Tagg are actively disputing whether the Death Star's supposed strategic dominance makes conventional defense irrelevant. These are the most powerful military officers in the galaxy, and they're running bureaucratic knife fights while the war is on. Then there's the Stormtrooper Corps, which is its own structural problem entirely. The Canon Stormtrooper Corps article describes it as an autonomous military branch operating under the Imperial Army, separate from the Navy, with its own command chain. Legend sources went further, describing it as explicitly independent, capable of bypassing local army commanders. The result in practice? 3 separate command chains: Navy, Army, Stormtrooper Corps, all nominally coordinated through Imperial High Command, a body whose own documentation acknowledges its place in the command structure was never fully nailed down. Ask a simple question. Aboard a Star Destroyer, who actually commands the Stormtroopers? The naval captain commands the ship and its operations, including embarked troops, in practice. But the Stormtrooper Corps retains its own hierarchy, which higher authority can override. No explicit canon scene establishes a clear verbal rule. That unresolved question isn't a gap in the source material. It's a structural description of how the Empire actually functioned. And into this arrangement, Palpatine embedded the ISB. The Imperial Security Bureau was mandated to ensure loyalty and root out treason within both the general population and the Imperial military. The ISB wasn't a police force working alongside the military. It was a surveillance apparatus embedded inside it, with authority to intimidate, coerce, and override other Imperials regardless of rank. Andor shows the mechanics in granular detail. ISB Supervisor Dedra Meero fights a jurisdictional dispute with colleague Blevin over the Ferrix incident. Major Partagaz adjudicates, inside the ISB, not between the ISB and the military. After the Aldhani heist, Partagaz convenes the Bureau and dictates sweeping new security measures across the Empire. Tighter travel controls, stronger garrison coordination, more severe sentencing. The ISB didn't request these from the Navy. It didn't negotiate them with the Army. It issued them. Its representative reportedly held a seat on the Imperial Joint Chiefs, giving the secret police direct input into top military decision-making while simultaneously monitoring the men in that room for disloyalty. COMPNOR, the Commission for the Preservation of the New Order, was reorganized from a Republic-era loyalist movement when Palpatine proclaimed the Empire in 19 BBY. Its stated function was ideological enforcement, propaganda, and political surveillance. Canon source material presents the ISB as a sub-organization nested under COMPNOR. The 2020 reference book, the Star Wars book, presents them as separate, parallel Imperial branches. The official continuity contradicts itself on whether these are the same institution, parallel institutions, or nested ones. So, COMPNOR and the ISB, same organization or separate? Depending on which canon text you're holding, either answer is correct. If the Galactic Empire ever produced an org chart, it would have needed a footnote on every line. Palpatine added one more structural layer on top of all this, the Moff system. By the 5th year of his reign, 14 BBY, 20 Moffs governed the Empire's sectors, answering to the Imperial Ruling Council, which reported directly to the Emperor. Not to the Navy, not to the Army. A parallel chain, planetary governor to Moff, to Grand Moff, to Ruling Council to Emperor, cutting straight across the regular military hierarchy. Moffs commanded their sector's entire asset package, naval forces, army forces, and intelligence services together, through what the canon calls a sector group. They weren't liaising with the military. Moffs were commanding it, from outside its own chain of command, on a separate authority track that ran directly to the throne. That same year, Tarkin proposed something further. Oversectors, groupings of particularly troublesome sectors, governed by a rank above standard Moffs. Palpatine created the Grand Moff rank immediately, and awarded it first to Tarkin. A Grand Moff could override any Moff or planetary governor in their oversector, and deploy military resources across it at will. In A New Hope, the Emperor dissolves the Imperial Senate, and Tarkin announces the consequence. The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. No Senate to appeal to, no institutional check, just a Grand Moff, his sector group, and a direct line to the Emperor. The theoretical rank relationship between a Grand Moff and a Fleet Admiral was never formally codified. Grand Moffs exercised functional supremacy in their theaters rather than occupying a clean slot on a rank table. Grand Admirals, personally appointed by Palpatine and confirmed in canon through Thrawn, cut across the existing structure from a different angle entirely, their authority granted as personal favor rather than derived from the system. Every new special rank Palpatine created further muddied the map. Political scientists have a name for this pattern. James T. Quinlivan of RAND formally defined coup-proofing in a 1999 paper, the set of actions a regime takes to prevent a military coup. The consistent features across regimes: promote officers for loyalty over merit, rotate commanders frequently, create parallel military structures that counterbalance each other, embed security forces inside the military to monitor it. The predictable cost is battlefield effectiveness. Saddam Hussein built 4 overlapping military structures: the regular army, the Republican Guard, the Special Republican Guard, and the Fedayeen. Saddam controlled by his son Uday. The overlapping structure gave Saddam a freer hand in control precisely by enabling him to bypass the regular chain of command at will. The Republican Guard was optimized for internal threat prevention rather than external defense. In 1991 and 2003, both campaigns revealed the cost in full. Stalin's method was purges. Between 1937 and 1938, the Red Army's senior officer corps was decimated. A significant portion of its general-grade commanders repressed or executed. The NKVD reported directly to Stalin, bypassing the military chain entirely, a parallel surveillance apparatus monitoring the armed forces for loyalty. When Operation Barbarossa began in June 1941, over half the Red Army's officers were new to their positions. The winter war against Finland 2 years earlier had already shown what a purged command structure looks like under fire. The pattern is consistent enough across enough regimes that the academic literature treats it as a rational actor decision. The autocrat trades battlefield effectiveness for regime survival. The coup is prevented, the war is lost. For the autocrat, that is the correct trade. Palpatine's system is consistent with every feature of this framework. That reading is interpretive. No scene in any film has him explaining his rationale, but it fits the evidence considerably better than the alternative, that a Sith Lord who engineered the fall of the Republic managed a decades-long double identity and personally designed every major Imperial institution, simply forgot to specify who commands the Stormtroopers. The Battle of Yavin is the clearest proof of what this costs. 30 rebel starfighters attacked the Death Star. No dedicated capital ship escort fleet was present. Tarkin had dismissed the threat as too minor to require conventional defense, the Tarkin Doctrine's cornerstone logic made literal. In Legends, that doctrine is formally designated Imperial Communique number 001044.92V. Canon's formulation describes it as the conviction that overwhelming displays of force, rather than force itself, were the most effective means of maintaining internal security. Either version produces the same result. The Death Star didn't need a fleet because the doctrine's assumption was that no one credible would attack it. Vader launched the only TIE squadron during the entire battle, on his own authority. Tarkin, informed there was a danger and asked whether his ship should be standing by, said, "Evacuate? In our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chances." The Death Star was destroyed. Tarkin's decision to destroy Alderaan as a demonstration had already eliminated whatever deterrent value the weapon possessed, converting a theoretical threat into a proven atrocity that gave the Alliance nothing left to lose. The doctrine's logic destroyed its own precondition. At Hoth, the command dysfunction was visible in real time, an army general undermining the Navy's Admiral to Vader before the fleet had finished its report, Ozzel executed, Piet promoted on the spot, the whole sequence watched by every officer on the bridge as a lesson in what this hierarchy actually is. At Endor, the Emperor died, and the fragmentation was immediate, not gradual, not through sustained rebel pressure, but all at once. The thing holding the structure together had never been coordination. It was fear of one man. The Mandalorian makes the latent design visible. Moff Gideon commands stormtroopers, TIE fighters, a light cruiser, and a dark trooper program years after Palpatine's death, without any visible central Imperial authority. By Season 3, he sits on a shadow council of rival Imperial warlords, each controlling their own territories and assets. A former ISB officer turned Moff, running a private empire from a hidden base on Mandalore. That's not a failure mode the Moff system fell into after Endor. The centrifugal force was structural from the beginning. Palpatine was the only gravity holding it in orbit. The Empire never had a chain of command. It had a cage with the Emperor at the center and everyone else circling, watching each other instead of the enemy at the gate. Palpatine built it that way because a divided military can't march on its master, and the same division that kept him safe in his throne room is exactly what let a few thousand rebels punch through a galaxy's worth of firepower. He wasn't beaten by the rebellion. He was beaten by the thing he did to his own army to make sure the rebellion was the only enemy he'd ever have to face. It worked right up until it didn't. And when it failed the way everything built on fear fails, all at once, from the inside. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.